Welcome, fellow gardener. I'm Mira. Come on in, brush the dirt off your knees and grab a cozy seat here in the potting shed. Pour yourself a warm cup of tea. The sun is just starting to dip below the tree line outside, casting that beautiful amber golden hour light across the yard. If you are joining me today, you are likely standing in your garden right now, looking at a magnificent, sprawling bush of lush green leaves and wondering, where on earth are the flowers? You've waited all spring. You've watered deeply. You've watched with hopeful anticipation. And yet, there is nothing. Just a vast, beautiful, but ultimately barren sea of green. I want you to know that I understand this heartbreak intimately. Hydrangeas are the undisputed royalty of the summer garden. When they bloom, they are extraordinarily generous. The massive blooms are heavy, deeply romantic, and look absolutely spectacular covered in shimmering morning dew. But when they refuse to bloom, they can feel incredibly stubborn and frustrating. Take a deep, slow breath. I promise you that you are not a bad gardener. Your beautiful plant is not broken. Hydrangeas are simply notorious for their blooming temperaments. The mystery of the barren bush almost always boils down to one highly specific pain point, a misunderstanding of how the plant sets its buds. Hydrangeas have a very specific biological architecture, and if we accidentally interrupt it, the plant will simply protect its roots and leaves, sacrificing the flowers entirely. In this gentle, comprehensive guide, we are going to look closely at that biology. We are going to completely demystify the intimidating terms old wood and new wood. We will look at precisely how and when to prune and explore the environmental factors that might be silently stealing your flowers. Before we begin the work, let's visualize our goal. Picture a breathtaking garden scene captured during golden hour. The warm, soft light filters through the translucent green leaves of a massive hydrangea shrub. The branches are gently bowed down toward the earth, heavy under the sheer weight of enormous basketball-sized mophead blooms. They showcase a gorgeous, sweeping gradient of periwinkle blue, soft lavender, and deep magenta. Dew sparkles on every delicate petal. The atmosphere is romantic, lush, and peaceful. That is what we are going to achieve together. Let's bring your garden back to life. To truly understand why your hydrangea isn't blooming, we must first look at how it actually creates its flowers. Unlike a simple annual flower that grows from a tiny seed, creates a bright bloom and dies all in a single season, a hydrangea is a complex, woody shrub. It has to plan ahead. It has to think about the changing seasons. The single most common reason hydrangeas fail to bloom is improper pruning. And improper pruning almost always happens because a gardener doesn't know if their specific plant blooms on what we call old wood or new wood. Let's unravel this vocabulary. When we say a hydrangea blooms on old wood, it simply means the plant creates next year's flower buds during the current year. Imagine it is late August. Your hydrangea is just finishing its summer display. As the days begin to shorten and the nights become slightly cooler, the plant stops putting its energy into growing taller. Instead, it starts forming tiny, microscopic flower buds at the tips of its woody stems and tucked safely within the little leaf joints along the branches. Those tiny buds are next summer's glorious flowers, and they are already there before autumn even arrives. These microscopic floral buds will sleep right there on the bare, exposed stems all through the freezing, bitter winter. They wrap themselves in tiny protective scales, waiting patiently for the warmth of spring. This is where the tragedy often occurs. If you go into your garden in late October, November, or on the very first warm day of March with your pruning shears, and you cut those brown, seemingly dead stems back to make the bush look neat and tidy, you are literally amputating this summer's flowers. You will get beautiful new green leaves in the spring, but absolutely zero blooms. Now let's contrast that with new wood. When a hydrangea blooms on new wood, it means the plant creates its delicate flower buds on the fresh, vibrant green growth that emerges in the spring of the current year. These types of hydrangeas are incredibly forgiving. They wake up in the spring sunlight, push out brand new tender stems from the base of the plant or from the remaining woody structure, and set their flower buds right at the very tips of that brand new growth. Because they don't form their buds in the fall, they never have to survive the harsh winter winds. You can actually take a pair of loppers and chop a new wood hydrangea all the way down to the ground in late winter, and it will miraculously push up new growth and still bloom beautifully for you that very same summer. It doesn't hold on to its floral hopes through the cold months. It starts completely fresh every single spring. Knowing this distinction is the absolute cornerstone of hydrangea care. In recent decades, brilliant horticulturists have bred hydrangeas that are the best of both worlds. We call these rebloomers, like the famous Endless Summer series. These magical plants bloom on both old and new wood. If a harsh winter kills the old wood buds, or if you accidentally prune them off in a moment of sheer enthusiasm, the plant doesn't give up. It will simply push out new green growth and form brand new buds to bloom later in the summer. They offer a wonderful safety net for the anxious gardener. Let's visualize the internal biology of the stem. Imagine a beautifully detailed botanical illustration. On the left side, representing old wood, the stem is woody, thick, and brown. Nestled at the joint of a leaf node is a plump, tightly closed green and purple bud, resting safely in a protective papery scale against the winter cold. On the right side, representing new wood, a tender, vibrant, bright green stem shoots upward toward the sun. Right at the very tip, a microscopic cluster of tiny floral primordia is rapidly forming under the warm spring light. Two entirely different strategies for creating beauty. You cannot fix your blooming problem until you know exactly which type of hydrangea is sitting out there in your yard right now. There are 6 main species of hydrangeas commonly grown in home gardens. Let's walk through them together so we can identify yours, learn its name, and finally know exactly how to treat it. Grab a pen if you need one, because this is the most important part of our chat. First, we have Hydrangea macrophylla. These are the bigleaf, mophead, or lacecap hydrangeas. Frankly, these are the divas of the garden. You will know them by their large, thick, shiny, heavily serrated leaves. The flowers are either massive, dense balls of colour or flat, delicate discs known as lacecaps. They are famous for dramatically changing their bloom colour based on the pH of your soil. And crucially, almost all traditional macrophylla hydrangeas bloom on old wood. They are the ones most often harmed by eager pruning. What is the absolute golden rule for the bigleaf hydrangea? Do not prune it. Put the shears away. The only time you should ever trim this shrub is in late spring, once the plant has fully leafed out, to remove the completely dead, hollow, brittle twigs that didn't survive the winter. Alternatively, You can gently deadhead the spent blooms immediately after they fade in midsummer, before the plant begins setting next year's buds in August. Next, we have Hydrangea paniculata, commonly called panicle hydrangeas. These are the reliable giants of the garden landscape. They have smaller, thinner, somewhat rougher leaves. Their gorgeous blooms are cone-shaped rather than round. Popular varieties you might recognize include limelight, vanilla strawberry, and bobo. The blooms usually start out a crisp white or pale lime green and gently fade to a dusty pink or deep rose in the autumn. The wonderful news? These bloom entirely on new wood. Our third species is Hydrangea arborescens, also known as the smooth hydrangea. Native to North America, these have thinner, heart-shaped matte green leaves. The most famous variety by far is the beloved Annabelle. The blooms are massive, spherical, and brilliant white. They are so heavy that they often cause the stems to droop all the way to the soil after a heavy summer rainstorm. Like the panicle hydrangeas, these also bloom entirely on new wood, making them incredibly tough and easy to manage. Let's not forget the magnificent Hydrangea quercifolia, the oak leaf hydrangea. This is another breathtaking North American native. The leaves are deeply lobed, looking exactly like oversized, textured oak leaves. They produce long, cone-shaped white flowers, but their true glory shines in autumn. The foliage turns brilliant, fiery shades of crimson, rich mahogany, and deep purple. Even in winter, they boast a distinctly peeling, papery bark. But take note, the oak leaf blooms on old wood. Prune it only if absolutely necessary for shape. Finally, we have the delicate Hydrangea serrata, or mountain hydrangea, and the massive Anomala petiolaris, the climbing hydrangea. The mountain hydrangea looks very similar to the big leaf, but smaller, tougher, and native to the cool mountains of Asia. The climbing hydrangea is a massive, woody vine that scales brick walls using aerial rootlets, producing lovely white lace-cap flowers. Both of these unique varieties bloom on old wood. They rarely need pruning at all, so it's best to let them grow wild and free, only trimming to keep them safely in bounds. Now that we know our hydrangeas, we must discuss the pruning trap. If you have an established new wood bloomer, you are completely safe to prune away in the early spring. But if you have an old wood bloomer, you must step away from the shears. However, we all know that even old wood hydrangeas need occasional maintenance. Deadheading is the common practice of snapping off last year's ugly, brown, crispy flowers to make the bush look pretty. If done incorrectly, you will sever the nodes holding this year's precious blooms. Let's learn exactly where to make the cut. When you look closely at a bare hydrangea stem in early spring, before the leaves open, you will see small, swollen bumps protruding along the sides of the woody stem. These are the nodes. This is where the magic happens. At the very top of the stem is the terminal bud. This is the largest, most dominant bud, and it will produce the largest, most magnificent flower. Moving down the stem, you will find pairs of smaller lateral buds. If the terminal bud is damaged, these lateral buds will step up and try to produce smaller flowers. If you are deadheading an old, dry mophead bloom in the spring, gently trace your fingers down the stem from the dead flower. Keep moving down until you find the very first set of plump, healthy, vibrant green buds swelling against the wood. You must make your cut just above those healthy buds. Imagine a crisp spring morning. You hold your silver razor-sharp pruning shears just a quarter-inch above that vibrant pair of green buds. You make a clean cut, angled slightly at 45 degrees, ensuring spring rain will run off the cut without causing the tender buds to rot. That is the perfect snip. Let's say you read the manual perfectly. You identified your beautiful macrophylla. You dutifully put your pruning shears away in the shed and didn't touch the plant all autumn or winter. Summer arrives and still no blooms. Just a giant green bush mocking you in the breeze. What happened? If improper pruning didn't steal your flowers, I can almost guarantee you that the weather did. The weather is the silent thief of the hydrangea world. Remember that old wood hydrangeas stubbornly form their tiny buds in late summer. Those fragile buds have to survive the entirety of winter. If you live in a colder growing zone, a brutally cold winter can literally freeze the floral buds right off the exposed stem. The deep roots survive beautifully beneath the soil, the woody structure survives the wind, and the plant pushes out lush green leaves in the spring. But the actual flower buds died a quiet death during a freezing night in January. Even worse than a deep winter freeze is the sheer cruelty of the late spring frost. Hydrangeas are easily tricked by the weather. If you get a bizarre, glorious week of warm sunshine in March or early April, your old wood hydrangea will joyfully think, "Spring is here!" The buds will break their deep winter dormancy, swell up, and begin to open. Then, inevitably, a cruel April frost descends in the night. The newly awakened, highly tender floral tissue freezes solid, turns black, and dies. Once again, you are left with a beautiful green shrub and absolute heartbreak. If you are constantly struggling with winter dieback, you must step in and protect your plant. First, do not fertilize late in the year. Stop giving your hydrangeas any fertilizer by mid-August. You do not want the plant pushing tender, weak, new green growth right before the winter winds arrive. You want it to harden off and go to sleep. Second, try building a burlap cylinder. In late fall, drive 4 wooden stakes into the ground around your hydrangea. Wrap burlap around the stakes and fill the cylinder gently with dry oak leaves, completely burying the stems like a cozy, insulating blanket. In early spring, gradually remove those dry leaves from your burlap cylinder. Don't take them all off at once, or a sudden late frost will shock the plant. Also, consider your site selection. Always try to plant your big leaf hydrangeas on the eastern or northern side of your house. Ironically, planting them on the warm, sunny, protected southern side causes them to wake up far too early in the spring, making them highly vulnerable to those devastating late frosts. A slightly cooler location keeps them sleeping safely until danger has passed. Now, if your hydrangea hasn't been pruned improperly and it hasn't suffered from frost damage, we must look critically at its environment. Hydrangeas are understory plants by nature, but they are not creatures of the deep, dark woods. A common myth among gardeners is that hydrangeas are true shade plants. While they love dappled shade and desperately need protection from the scorching, blazing afternoon sun, they absolutely must have sunlight to generate the massive amount of energy required to bloom. If your hydrangea is planted under a dense canopy of ancient, heavy maple trees, or tucked away into a dark, gloomy north-facing corner where it receives absolutely no direct light, it will not bloom. It will stretch its broad green leaves out as far as it can to catch whatever faint light is available. but it simply won't have the solar power to produce heavy, dense flowers. Your hydrangea wants morning sun, afternoon shade. It needs about 4 to 6 hours of gentle, direct morning sunlight to bloom prolifically. Then there is the issue of nitrogen overload. Ask yourself, are you feeding your lush green lawn right next to your hydrangea beds? Lawn fertilizer is incredibly high in nitrogen, which is the first number in the NPK ratio on a fertilizer bag. Nitrogen's primary job is to promote aggressive, rapid, lush, leafy green growth. If your hydrangea absorbs too much nitrogen from the lawn runoff, it will experience a phenomenon known as vegetative growth. It becomes so busy producing massive, beautiful green leaves that it completely forgets to trigger its reproductive cycle. To fix this, keep lawn fertilizer far away from your hydrangeas. Instead, use a balanced fertilizer or one specifically designed for blooming shrubs, higher in phosphorus to promote blooms. While we are talking about soil chemistry, let's marvel at the magic of the macrophylla. Picture a split-screen view. On the left, the soil is a rich, dark, acidic forest loam, and the blooms are an electrifying sapphire blue. On the right, the soil is mixed with pale, chalky limestone, making it alkaline. Here, the blooms are a brilliant bubblegum pink. This is the stunning visual magic of soil pH and aluminum availability at work. Let's talk about thirst. The botanical name hydrangea actually comes from the Greek words hydor, meaning water, and angos, meaning jar or vessel. These magnificent plants are literally named water vessels. Hydrangeas have incredibly vast but shallow root systems and enormous leaves that transpire moisture rapidly into the summer air. They lose water quickly. If a hydrangea experiences severe drought stress during the critical period when it is forming its delicate buds, it will instantly abort the flowers to save its own life. Survival will always override reproduction. To prevent this, you must master the art of watering. Do not lightly spray your hydrangeas with a hose every single day. This only encourages weak, shallow roots that dry out in an instant. Instead, place a hose at the base of the plant on a slow, gentle trickle for 30 to 45 minutes twice a week. You want the water to penetrate deeply into the soil, encouraging the roots to chase the moisture downward, making the plant incredibly resilient. Furthermore, you absolutely must maintain a 2 to 3 inch layer of organic mulch over the root zone to protect it from the baking summer sun. A quick word of comfort regarding watering. It is incredibly common for big leaf hydrangeas to wilt dramatically in the peak heat of a July afternoon, even if the soil is soaking wet. They look completely pathetic. Do not panic and immediately flood them with water. Wait until the sun goes down. If the leaves miraculously perk back up on their own by the evening, the plant is perfectly fine. It was simply transpiring water faster than its roots could pull it up from the soil. If the leaves are still drooping the next morning, then it truly needs a deep drink. If you are looking at a barren green bush right now, here is your step-by-step recovery plan for next year. Step 1. Identify and label. Go out to your garden today, look at the leaves and determine if you have an old wood or new wood bloomer. Put a physical tag on the plant so you don't forget next spring. Step 2. Drop the pruners. Make a solemn vow right now. If your plant is an old wood bloomer, you will not touch it with pruning shears this fall, this winter, or next spring. You will embrace the messiness and let it rest peacefully. Step 3. Assess the light. Watch the sun track across your yard. If your hydrangea is in total gloomy shade, plan to carefully transplant it to a spot with morning sun once it goes dormant in late autumn. Step 4. Stop the nitrogen. Keep the lawn feed away and switch to a gentle, blooming fertilizer. Step 5. Winterize. In November, surround your vulnerable plants with a burlap cage and pack it loosely with dry leaves to protect those precious buds from the freezing wind. Keep them watered deeply through the fall so they go to sleep healthy. Gardening is, fundamentally, a lifelong exercise in hope and patience. When we plant a hydrangea in the earth, we are choosing to partner with nature, and sometimes nature gently requires us to slow down and learn its specific, quiet rhythms. A hydrangea that doesn't bloom is not a failure on your part. It is simply a living thing that is trying to communicate with you. It is telling you that it was cut at the wrong time, that it shivered in the night, or that it is hiding in the shadows. By listening, we become better stewards of the earth. By understanding the profound biological difference between old wood and new wood, by putting away those tempting pruning shears, and by offering just a little bit of winter protection, you are beautifully aligning yourself with the needs of the plant. So wait for it, care for it, trust the process. When next summer finally arrives and you walk out into the golden hour light to find those massive, heavy, dew-covered blooms bowing gracefully toward the earth, I promise you, the wait will have been entirely worth it. The garden always rewards patience. Thank you so much for sitting with me in the potting shed today. I would absolutely love to hear what is growing in your garden right now, or what struggles you might be facing with your own hydrangeas. Leave a comment down below so we can chat about it over our tea. And if you enjoyed our quiet time together today, please consider subscribing for more gentle garden guides and botanical deep dives. Take a deep breath, trust your hands, and happy growing, my friend.